Right. It's 7 o'clock, so we will get going. Welcome everybody. I'm sorry that I can't see many of you. I gather you can see me, which is a little disconcerting. But just to say, my name is Michael Winter. I'm the chair of the local nature partnership, also double up as a University of Exeter professor, and I'm also on the board of Natural England. And I also live in the wilds of West Devon, so I was a parish councillor for many years, not now. Anyway, my pleasure to introduce this event. We've got a pretty busy agenda, so I'm going to ask people to try and keep to time. It also means I think it's going to be very difficult to have questions directly. So we're encouraging people, if you have any questions as we go through, please put it into the chat function. And if we have time, we'll pick those out and ask speakers to comment. But if it becomes too tight, we may just try and deal with those later and come back afterwards. So we're certainly keen to take any suggestions on board. Just a couple of housekeeping matters. We would encourage everybody to be muted. Because otherwise it can get a little bit problematic. I think we have the power to mute and turn everybody's video off and all that sort of thing anyway. But if you could do it yourselves, that would be great. And in a minute, we're going to have an audio message from none other than Simon Reeve. I have to say, I knew who Simon Reeve was, but I didn't know he lived in Devon or spent some of his time in Devon, which is nice to know we have someone like that in the county. So that will come in a minute. But before we get there, let me just say a few opening remarks about this initiative, which is really important in my view. I spend a lot of time talking about these kind of nature issues at a sort of national level. It can become very removed from ordinary life, really. And you know, at the end of the day, nature and nature recovery is all about what we do as ordinary people in Devon, whether we're farmers or whether we're citizens. It's about the communities of Devon. And so this initiative is really about helping those communities, councils, parish town councils, but also community organisations, just to network, to know what's going on in other parts of the county, to partner up. We're going to be doing all the usual social media stuff with Facebook group. I don't understand Facebook, I don't do it, but I gather it's important. And hopefully as well, having some sort of discussion group set up to learn from each other. And maybe if this really goes well, some training courses for practical conservation skills at a local level. Now is the time. I mean, the whole government agenda at the moment is in this area is about nature recovery. There are some very, very brave commitments being made by government as to, you know, areas to be replanted with trees, areas to recover biodiversity, some very ambitious targets over a long period of time. And if those targets are going to be achieved, they're achieved by action at the local level. People in Whitehall can say as much as they like about targets, but it's whether a landowner decides to plant his or her land with trees, or a landowner decides to try and recreate some corn grassland, that is what's going to matter. So I think this initiative is really about making it work at a local level. So there's a lot of information and expertise around. If any of you have tried to find information about these sorts of issues, you'll immediately know there's so many organisations, Woodland Trust and the Wildlife Trust and Living Churchyards and Devon Birds, and the list could go on, and it's often hard to know where to start. So we're really keen at the local nature partnership to try and act as a bit of a signpost for that, to put people in touch with the right organisations for advice and support and information and encouragement. So those are my opening words. I'm sure we're going to have a fascinating evening. We've got a really good range of speakers. And hopefully, if all the technology works, we're going to go straight to Simon Reeve now, Katie, if you can bring him in with his pre-recorded little video clip for us.
Yes, so hopefully this will work for everyone. I'll just start it now.
Hello there, I'm Simon Reeve and I love living in Devon, so I want to help Wild About Devon get started. It's a new Devon Local Nature Partnership project which is providing support, information and training for anyone in Devon who wants to help their local wildlife. If you have just a little time to give nature a hand, go to their website for some ideas. We all love wildlife. It gives us so much, but it needs our help now. So please get involved if you can. Find out, help out, and give a bit back to nature. Wild About Devon is there to help you.
Great, that was good. That was very encouraging and his usual sort of upbeat way of looking at things. So thanks for that. So I'm going to move straight over now to Harry. I'm sure Harry Barton will be known to nearly all of you, if not everybody, as the CEO of the Devon Wildlife Trust, one of the most successful wildlife trusts in the country. And he's also the vice chair of the local nature partnership. So Harry's going to really set us going now with a talk about Wild About Devon and what it's all about. So over to you, Harry.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I will now try the most difficult bit of my talk, which is going to be sharing the screen. So can everybody see that? Could Michael or Katie or someone? Brilliant, you can all see that. Thank you very much. Great, well, thank you so much, Michael. And it's a great privilege and also slightly intimidating to be trying to summarize Wild About Devon in just 15 minutes, but that's what I'm going to try and do. And Sarah Jennings, I'm sure, will leap in at the end if there is anything crucial that I forgot to mention. But I think the first thing to say about Devon, and I think this whenever I've gone on holiday, which I've just done, is what an amazing place it is. Whenever I come back to Devon, I think, why have I left this place? And you know, sites like this, which is one of our mires up on Dartmoor, here it is totally come to life in this cotton grass. I mean, this is just so fantastic, isn't it? We are so lucky to have all these assets that we've got in Devon. And we've really got things to boast about. So this is the most biodiverse parish in the United Kingdom. Here we are, Braunton, not least thanks to this incredible set of dunes, the Braunton Barrows. And it's just the same at sea as well. So under the waves, out of sight, we have at least half of our wildlife and some really internationally important habitats and species here. I'd never cease to be amazed. And I know much less about this. And I had no idea when I came down to Devon about 11 years ago that it was quite so rich for its marine flora and fauna as well. And we've got some great success stories. So, of course, whenever I speak, I mention the beaver, but I do this really just to remind us that we can turn things around. We spend so much of our time bemoaning the stuff that's been lost and trying to hang on to what's left. But the beaver tells me that we can actually bring back stuff that has been lost. And that is a real source of hope for us. But of course, as we all know, things aren't great out there. I'm not going to dwell on this. We all know the statistics, we all know the information. The sad truth of this, but this slide to me epitomizes this so well. So this is the fate of the cuckoo, you know, the great herald of spring. And on the right, you see the distribution of the cuckoo in round about 1980. And every one of those red dots is where a cuckoo was recorded. And then on the left, you see the picture 30 years later, and you see that the cuckoo has almost vanished from the wider landscape. It's still hanging on there in Dartmoor and there on the edge of Exmoor, but it's declining there too. And this is the cuckoo is just one. You see the same picture for bird species after bird species after bird species. And if you look at insects, the decline is 8 times as fast as it is for birds. So not all is well out there. And we know there are a number of reasons for this. There is, of course, the loss of habitat, there is pollution from pesticides and all sorts, and of course, there is the threat of climate change. And these 3 things combined with other factors mean that about 1 in 7 of our species in the UK is at risk of extinction. And Devon, beautiful though it is no exception. It's just as bad here in Devon as it is in Staffordshire or Norfolk. Now, if we look at our wider landscape, we can start to see why this is the case. So this is a quintessentially beautiful view of Devon. Here he is in East Devon, looking out there. And yes, it is a lovely landscape. But if we look at the middle distance here, and that very green, that rather bright green landscape there, which is interwoven between these very sort of short cropped hedges and the odd tree, So if you take out those short crop hedges and the odd tree, you are left with a landscape which is predominantly bright green, and that will be a number of grass species mainly. I could count the number of species on my hands, and few of them will be native, and most of that area will be sprayed several times a year with chemicals which do not make that a very nice place for insects or the birds which survive off them. And this is the story of about 3/4 of our landscape in the United Kingdom. And that is one of the principal reasons why we are losing our wildlife. No, it's not the only reason, but it's one of the principal reasons. And it is very similar out at sea. So here we look at the sea, and I was swimming in the sea over the weekend, and it's absolutely glorious. And you go down to the coast, and you see wonderful views like this. This is up in North Devon, and you think, where on earth on the planet would I rather be than here? But when you go out a little bit away from the coast, the protected areas, the seafloor is a very sad story. This is a slide that some of you may well have seen before, but on the left you see a bit of nice, reasonably pristine habitat on the seafloor. 2 days after that slide was taken on the left, this slide on the right was taken. What had happened in that intervening period was that a scallop dredger had gone over with these great big metal rakes to scoop up the scallops. And in the process of doing that, they destroy all this wildlife habitat. And a depressing proportion of our seas in the UK, our seabeds, now look like this on the right rather than that on the left. And of course, the sad thing about this is that we just don't see it. You know, we can see the new housing development going up. We can see HS2 ploughing through fields and forests. We don't see this because it's hidden from us. So we have a challenge on our hands because scientists tell us that we need to get at least 30% of our land and sea protected for wildlife. And that means proper protection, not just protection, not paper parks or things like that, but properly managed for wildlife if we're going to hang on to the species we've got, let alone bring anything back. So why am I showing you a picture of Slovenia? And this is Slovenia, by the way. And the answer is that Slovenia, like Luxembourg and Cyprus and Germany and France and lots of other successful, productive, developed countries in Europe, has already got to this 30% figure. In fact, in the case of Slovenia, it's a good way above it. It's about 48%. So it is perfectly possible for us in the UK to get to this 30% figure. We shouldn't listen to these arguments that say that the wildlife loss is a sacrifice for economic development. It's simply not true, because there are other countries out there, including ones which have a higher GDP than us, that have already achieved this figure. So we can do it. But we have a challenge, and I know a number of people watching this would have seen me show this slide before, so forgive the repetition, but I think it's an important point to reiterate. So I'm going to go over this very quickly, but basically, if we look at if we divide all our UK landscape up into this pie chart, then you have a 70% here on the left. That's the remaining land area of England. I'm not saying that's of no importance for wildlife, but I'm just going to leave that to one side for now. I'm going to look at this slice of the pie, or these 3 slices of the pie, which go from about 12 o'clock to about 3:30 on the top right-hand side. Now, the first, about just under half of that represents the land that is currently protected for wildlife in law. It doesn't represent the bits that are most valuable for wildlife. It's just those bits that are legally protected. And you can see, if we want to get 30%, we're currently at 13%. If we want to get to 30%, we need to more than double the land that is managed for wildlife. And I'm afraid that there's a sting in the tail, because even though 13%, 1/3, is currently protected, it doesn't mean that it's actually in good condition for wildlife. So an awful lot of Dartmoor is protected, but actually the triple SI there is in very poor condition for wildlife, and actually is rather less good condition than some of the areas outside it which aren't protected. So I would argue that we need to double, if not triple, the area of land that is protected for wildlife if we're going to get to this magic 30% figure. So how do we do it? First of all, we need a game plan, and this is the Nature Recovery Network. Hopefully this will be written in law very shortly. It's going through, the Environment Bill is going through Parliament at the moment. Our Nature Recovery Network and map is currently in development. We don't have it here in Devon yet, but it will be available shortly. But it'll look something like this. So a plan that says These are the bits of land that are already protected for wildlife. These are where we can expand them. These are where we can reconnect them together and to create this wonderful connected landscape for wildlife. And it won't just be a sort of a very low resolution map like this. You'll be able to drill right down almost to a field by field basis. A really exciting tool to have. So that's a great starting point. But of course, that's just the theory. How do we make it work in practice? Well, part of this will be down to big projects. This is called the Great Fen Project in East Anglia. I'm sure a lot of you will have heard of this. Huge, gets lots, attracts millions of pounds, loads of media attention. It's done very, very well. And I would love to have at least one of these in Devon. But just look at the landscape around the edge of this sort of green rectangle. The landscape around the edge has got very little of any interest for wildlife, and that's not sustainable. So projects like this on their own are not enough. We need much more. And this is where local communities and smaller groups come in. So this is a group in London, an initiative called Rewilding London. Here's a group planting trees in the London park. So London, famous for its green spaces, not all of them managed very well for wildlife. And this group is starting to tackle that. Yes, on a small scale, but with enough of people, enough groups doing things like this in London parks and elsewhere, we can really start to make a difference. Now, this is some work done by an academic called Malcolm Gladwell, who some of you might have heard of. And what Malcolm Gladwell was interested in is social tipping points. So what Gladwell argues is that when any new innovation, technological, particularly innovation, comes along, you get groups, you get the innovators, the first 2.5% who are the people who really come up with a new idea. Then you've got the early adopters, the people who I expect we like to think most of us are, the people who are the sort of the first people out there to try and have your new electric car or iPad or whatever it might be. And then you get the rest of society who follows. And Gladwell argues that at about 16%, some other academics say it's 20 or 25%, but Gladwell argues that about 16% you have this tipping point where suddenly everyone else starts to get involved too. Now, in the environmental movement, we are still languishing in this early adopter stage. We haven't yet got to that tipping point. But it's an exciting time for us because the interest and awareness of the natural environment and climate change in wider society in the UK has never been higher. And so this is the point where we as groups of socially enlightened people can help to push us to the right and get to that tipping point, or the chasm, as Gladwell calls it here. Big environmental organizations and governments on their own can't do it. It needs wider society to get involved. So what do we need to do? Well, there's an awful lot of stuff going out there already on community work. So this is just some projects that the Devon Wildlife Trust is involved with. So Action for Insects, bat-friendly communities, saving Devon's treescapes. In fact, this year we set up our own team called the Wilder Communities, where we're trying to help enable local communities to do this kind of work. But currently we're reaching thousands of people, and we need to be reaching tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. So Devon Wildlife Trust, or even an organization quite a lot bigger than us on its own, cannot achieve this. It has to be a much wider group of people working together. That's the only way that we're going to achieve this social tipping point we need to do. So this is where the idea of Wild About Devon comes from. So Wild About Devon, certainly not my idea. It's a cracking idea. And you can see that you've got lots of organizations involved. You've got local authorities like the County Council. You've got various NGOs. You've got protected landscapes. We've got Teignbridge Wildlife Wardens. We're going to be hearing from Audrey and her wonderful team later on today. And I should, acknowledge the great work Audrey did in helping to set up Wild About Devon. And of course, you've also got the Devon Association of Local Councils. And there's a really important role for parish councils in this too. We've got 426 parish councils in Devon. Now, and there is, of course, this statutory duty. It may be one that's often ignored and trumped by other things like potholes or whatever it might be, emptying the dog bins, but it's an incredibly important one. And if every parish council, if every parish and town council across Devon did something, doesn't have to be enormous, but just did something for wildlife and for this agenda, what a massive difference that would make. So let's not forget this duty that we all have. So what is Wild About Devon there to do? Well, Simon very eloquently summarised it, but here's some things. I won't read out all these bullet points. You can all read, and I haven't got the time. But just really what it's here to do, it's not here to deliver stuff directly. That's down to the individual groups and organisations and all of us involved. But it's here to signpost, to provide information, to share good news stories, to put people in touch with each other. There's webinars that are being planned, one for the planning system, one on the Biodiversity Record Centre is going to be held quite shortly. I think we should treat this as an evolving tool. When the more that we all get involved, the more useful this will be to all of us. So do please get involved. And I'm hoping that will also encourage us to think about things creatively. Now, when I was doing some work looking into this, just in preparation for this talk, I came across this appeal that actually another wildlife trust had run. So this is the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust. And the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust had run this campaign this year called Waste of Space. And what they've done is they've encouraged lots of community groups to identify areas where they live which are a waste of space for wildlife. So these are the areas which are mown every week and why they're mown every week within an inch of their life. The areas that are needlessly tarmacked, the trees which are cut down as soon as they get more than 3 feet high for no apparent reason. We all know them, they're around everywhere. And they don't necessarily cost anyone anything to manage differently, but what a difference to wildlife it would make if we could change the management there. So this is the sort of example of a sort of creative way that I think we might be able to get more people engaged in this kind of agenda. Appeals to my sense of humour as well. And I think finally, I'll just end with really a call to action for all of us. You know, this is something that no organisation on its own can solve. It's not for the Devon County Council to do, it's not for the big NGOs to do, it's for all of us to do. And I think if all of us do something, and do it soon and encourage others to do the same, then what a difference we can make. And Wild About Devon, I believe, is a cracking way to do it. So thank you very much for listening. I'll finish now, but I'll just invite Sarah Jennings to say anything that I have forgotten to say. Thank you.
Hi, Harriet, thank you. That was brilliant. So no, the only thing I was going to add to that was please, everybody do have a look at the Devon LNP website. We've created a community toolkit to try and help with this, with lots of links and contacts. And so have a look at that, and please do share with us as well. So this really is only going to work if you all get involved and you all start sharing your learning and experience and network. So take a look and get in touch with us. It would be brilliant. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sarah, and thanks very much indeed, Harry, for that whistle stop tour. But you know, you've got all the main points over and the importance of it, and the absolute urgent nature of some of this. Right, we're sticking to time. Amazing so far. So we're going to have 2 minutes animation, I think. Wild About Devon. I don't know whether that's Katie or Sarah organising this. Okay, Katie.
Yes, so if it should be ready to go now.
Yeah.
Devon is a landscape of wooded valleys, wide estuaries, windswept uplands and rolling farmland, all between two coastlines of sheltered bays and rugged cliffs. It's easy to see why so much wildlife calls Devon home. But there's a problem. Globally, we are now in an ecological emergency. Devon might not look like it's in trouble, but all of our wildlife is under immense pressure. Over the last 50 years, Devon's habitats and species have seen huge declines. Waterfoals went extinct, and breeding curlews are right on the brink. When was the last time you heard a cuckoo? But there is hope. We can all make a difference if we work together and act now to help create a nature recovery network right across Devon. So, where to begin? You can find out what's already on your doorstep, and you don't have to be an expert. Start with identifying common species, and over time you'll begin to build up a picture of your area. Once you know more about your local wildlife, it's time to start protecting and restoring it. Let those untidy corners develop. protect and connect important patches of habitat, and manage areas more carefully to encourage wildlife back. Even small changes make a huge difference, from mowing the churchyard a little less often to building a log pile. At first the changes will be small, but bit by bit there'll be just a little more buzz, a little extra bird song, or a few more frogs in the pond. Over time, your community efforts will be rewarded with a healthy, resilient environment brimming with wonderful wildlife. Knowing where to begin or find help can be confusing, and that's why Wild About Devon has been especially created by the many organisations which together form the Devon Local Nature Partnership. Whether you're a community group wanting to network with like-minded souls, or a parish council wanting to find the best ways to meet your wildlife responsibilities, just explore the Devon Local Nature Partnership website. There's loads of guidance there to help you take action for wildlife, connect with others across the county, and get involved with projects that are going on in your area. Together, we can restore Devon's nature.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Katie, for that. And yeah, that's good. And I saw in the chat someone said show it in schools. Well, yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. So hopefully that animation can be used. I mean, it's fine for us to see it once, but it needs to be used for others as well. So thank you very much. Right, we're now going to have some quick 5-minute sessions on different aspects of well, just different issues really. So I'm going to start off with data. Data is important. We need to be evidence-based. We need to know what's going on out there. So firstly, Jess Smollican from the Biodiversity Records Centre. It's your pitch on wildlife data, please.
Thank you very much. So we've got a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I hope everyone can hear me, of what the Devon Biodiversity Records Centre do. So first of all, who are we? At Devon Biodiversity Records Centre, we collect, manage and make available records of wildlife. We are hosted by the Devon Wildlife Trust, but we work in partnership with other organisations across the county. We currently manage a database of upwards of 5.5 million records, and we're adding to that all the time. We manage county wildlife site framework for Devon, and that includes over 2,000 sites designated for their biodiversity value. And we've got a map here showing our county wildlife sites. They're scattered all over the county. DBRC is part of a network of over 45 local environment record centres. And why we're here is to solve problems with data that many of our conservation partners and the county and district planning authorities face. And that's disparate data, which is often inaccessible and of unknown quality and provenance. So we're a source of information of a known quality, and we provide that in a usable format. We're run not for profit, and we're partnership led. We focus on gathering these things. So there's species presence records at the highest resolution and confidence from varying sources. Lots of different partners send us in records. And each record goes through a verification process by DBRC staff and volunteer experts. Our priority habitat data at field scale from surveys and land use data from remote sensing and other techniques. Site condition surveys, enabling us to report on the state of the environment outside of statutory protected sites. So those are the SSSIs and our special areas of conservation. We also collect NVC, so that's National Vegetation Classification and Habitat data, and condition assessment through various surveys such as our county wildlife site monitoring. We collate the best available data that we can across the county. Within the DBRC team, we also have some very skilled ecologists, excuse me, and so that helps us to carry out training and skill sharing as well. So here's a quick graphic of what we aim to do. So we take in data. We try and turn that into information, which once it's connected, can inform knowledge and provide insights into various issues. And so connecting those up, we can hopefully have an impact. So we add value to ad hoc species records throughout through our processes, and we provide context. Our aim is to use our quality data to provide the best evidence for informing policy and protection and projects and conservation across the county. One of the things we need to do is to charge for our data. We don't get any government funding, and our work is locally managed and funded through various partnerships and lots of projects that we work with, and also the services that we provide. So everything that we do, all the data collection and the validation, verification, all costs. And so we work on a cost recovery basis through data licensing and through services such as our data searches. If we didn't do that, it would mean less data and lower quality data. However, there are places that you can go to get a first idea of what is happening in your area. So for example, the Devon Environment Viewer is a great tool for local groups wishing to explore what's in their area. There's also the NBN Atlas and Magic Maps. The DBRC data that's on the Environment Viewer isn't as detailed as it is if you came straight to us, and it also has constraints on it, such as use for commercial purposes. There will be an opportunity to learn more about these sites and resources in a couple of weeks. As Harry said, we'll be running a webinar. So if you have any questions on that, let us know, and we can make sure that we cover those in that webinar. But that, in a nutshell, is what we do. And also just a quick note to say that the Devon Bat Survey is back, and that's a way that groups can find out what bats are in your area, particularly if you're in these 5 key areas that we're running. So check that one out as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Jess, and for keeping to time, and so much that could be said about that. I know we have a great tradition in this country of local record keeping going back to the 18th century. And you're sort of following in all those footsteps of what was often amateur naturalists going out there and doing stuff. Right, let's move on then quickly. There may be some questions, I know we'll come back hopefully. So verges, which we often forget, but we often see as well, and really can be very important reservoirs of wildlife. So Tom from DCC.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I'll just do a whistle-stop tour of Devon County Council, our road verge policy, and how community groups and parish and district councils can get involved in managing them for wildlife, really. Value of road verges. I'm sure everyone attending this evening understands and knows about the value of road verges for our wild flora and fauna, but Devon actually has over 2,000 hectares of road verge, owing to the fact that it is a particularly massive county. So there's a lot of opportunity there to help provide for wildlife, and throughout the UK, road verges support over 700 species, and over 45% of our native flora have been recorded on them. But due to a number of factors, some of which I'll touch on in a minute, we've actually seen a 20% drop in the floral diversity of our road verges over the last few decades. And even more alarmingly than that, since the 1930s, the UK as a whole has lost over 97% of its wildflower meadows. So a lot of the time, especially in a rural environments that such as Devon, our road verges are actually the last sort of refuge for a lot of wildflowers and the species that they support, you know, pollinators, butterflies, birds, bats, all that sort of stuff. So road verges are critically important as a wildlife resource, and also one other benefit of them is the public members of the public are genuinely very connected to road verges. They provide great entranceways into a number of parishes and towns and villages, and more recently, over nearly 17,000 people UK-wide signed up to the Plantlife campaign for road verges to be managed more sympathetically for wildlife. So they've obviously, No Mow May was a most recent one from Plantlife, but there's a lot of public interest in managing road verges sympathetically for wildlife. So I'll touch briefly on verge management in Devon. So currently, Devon County Council, as the lead highways authority, has its road verge cutting policy, which is to only cut for health and safety reasons, and that is visibility displays on junctions, lay-bys, the inside of bends, and also forward approaches to signage. So DCC will undertake, and I'm sure a lot of you may see throughout the county, grass cutting that goes on throughout the summer. So our rural cutting regime, as for Devon County Council, is on roads over 60 miles an hour, and they are cut at least once a year between mid-May and mid-June. Depending on the year and how fast the grass has grown in those visibility areas, there may be a second cut, which I know this year has been particularly good for grass growth, so they have put in a second cut this year. And in our urban cutting, so roads which are 40 miles an hour or less, so the ones through villages, usually those visibility displays are cut 4 times a year, and that is usually once between May and August, once a month. So some areas of the county have actually taken control over their own urban grass cutting policy. So if you're native to Exeter, for example, they undertake the cutting on behalf of Devon County Council. So they receive some funding from Devon County Council, but any additional cutting on top of the visibility displays are done at the expense of that parish and town council. So some areas, again, Mid Devon's a good example, they undertake cutting of all areas of grass. So they have taken on that responsibility from Devon County Council, but DCC only visibility displays for safety. One thing to quickly mention at this point is there's actually a number of what are called special verges throughout the county, 112 actually across 73 parishes, and they've been designated for a number of years now due to their exceptional wildlife value or value to the public. So they are either floristically interesting or they are connected to a triple SI or a county wildlife site or a host of rare species, and they're dotted all throughout the county. So for example, in Mid Devon, I only pick Mid Devon because that's where I live, there are 42 throughout Mid Devon, and like I said, they are designated for a wide range of reasons, but a lot of the time is for orchids of a wide variety of species. And they may you may see as you drive around the county sort of wooden posts with red tops on road verges. They actually do demarcate our special verges, but because of the changes in grass cutting policy, as I mentioned before, a lot of these sites unfortunately are no longer cut on an annual basis, so are declining in terms of their wildlife value. So again, more opportunities and something to really keep an eye out for. As Jess mentioned, these special verge locations are all located on the Devon Environment Viewer map. So you may have one in your parish or local community which may not be currently managed, which is a great opportunity to do so and get a really good wildlife area under management. So as I've touched on, verges require managing. So outside of the areas that are cut for health and safety, there's a lot of areas of our grass verges which aren't cut at all by Devon County Council, and that leads to a lot of over competition of our wildflower species in a lot of areas. So annual management of road verges is essential if they're going to be floristically interesting and keep their wildlife value. And obviously timing is everything. So it's really important that wildflowers are able to complete their full cycle and grow, flower and set seed onto your road verge. A 2-cut management approach is usually ideal, so that is normally cutting at the end of the summer and just before the spring, but other options are also available. So 1 cutting between August and September, but what is vitally important for all of that is that we remove the arisings from those road verges so that nutrients don't then end up in the road verge and grasses then outcompete the flowers and that sort of stuff. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of verges which aren't cut by Devon County Council throughout the county, and what we're doing as part of Life on the Verge of Devon and as part of Wild About Devon is encouraging local community groups and local parish and district councils to manage road verges for wildlife where it is safe to do so and not in conflict with DCC's health and safety requirements. So on the Devon LMP website, there is a free step-by-step guidance document, and that's also on the Devon County Council Environment web pages as well. But there's a guidance document online that we've produced that has 5 steps in it in terms of how you go about managing a road verge in your local area for wildlife, and it's called Life on the Verge in Devon. And if you have any questions or queries or anything about wanting to undertake any management of road verges, then just drop an email at the nature@devon.gov.uk email address, and we'll help you in any way we can. And that is me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Tom. Let's move rapidly on to the last of these 5-minuters and to Teignbridge Wildlife Wardens work from Audrey, please.
Hello.
Audrey Compton. Hi.
I'm Audrey Compton and I farm on the edge of Dartmoor. I've been a livestock farmer since 1969, and for the first 25 years I was quite an intensive dairy farmer until I realised how much I was damaging the wildlife that I love. So for the last 21 years, my husband, John Wetman, and I have been farming with nature. This evening is all about taking community action for nature. But why? It's because it's our last chance, because for eons, we've taken wildlife for granted. We've even thought of it as an unnecessary luxury. But now we've realised that we just can't live without it. We need it to provide our physical needs and our spiritual needs. Compared to dragonflies, us humans are a new species. It's only 200,000 years ago that Homo sapiens evolved. And we evolved to live very, very, very close to every part of nature. Our genes haven't changed a lot since then, but the way that we live definitely has. How could we have forgotten that we're only a part of this planet? We mostly live for the moment, and the accuracy of our memories is pretty awful. Mine is particularly bad. And yet I remember a conversation from 1970 with a lovely old man, long ago dead, who lived near my farm. Jackie Birdboy Shawlan told me about the yellowhammers, the corn buntings, and the woodlarks that used to live in ashcombs, hedgerows and fields before and during the Second World War. He said that modern farming had killed them. He missed them, he grieved for them, and he talked about them. Jackie wasn't educated. He left school at 14, but he worked on the land for all of his life and he was part of nature. He not only noticed things, but he felt them. My husband remembers growing up here in the early 1950s, where many South Devon hedges were trimmed quite hard by hand every winter. They had to be thick and stock-proof because fences were expensive. Although they were trimmed every year, there was still abundant wildlife because the fields were all habitats. They'd never been fertilized, they'd never been sprayed. There were cornfields with lots of weeds for linnets. There were pastures with lots of grassy tussocks where voles crept and owls hunted. There were multicolored meadows full of butterflies and awkward, steep, scrubby patches where lots of birds, insects buzzed. Day and night, there was lots of wildlife. 70 years later, hedgerows have become extraordinarily important because they're almost all that is left, and they are connecting up precious fragments of habitat. But I believe that if we work together now, we can save our wildlife. And like the community in the animation, we can find happiness in the nature that we see returning. Every butterfly, every bird song, and every frog that hops. So why am I here tonight? Well, 2 years ago, when Teignbridge District Council declared a climate emergency, we started Action on Climate in Teignbridge for all of our local councils as they tackle the climate and ecological emergencies. There's such a lot to do, but we have to be ambitious and we all need to make changes fast. Our young people are relying on us. Now, the district of Teignbridge has a unique selling point that it just doesn't want. It's got a wildlife warden scheme. Over the past 9 months, the Act Ecology Group has got over 60 wildlife wardens working for nature in 33 of our parishes. Well, what on earth could be wrong with that? Well, it's simple. We don't want to be unique. We would like every parish in Devon, every community in the UK, every village, town and city in Europe, every single part of the world to have communities working to make wildlife strong and to give joy and life to all of us. So how does our project work? Well, it's really flexible. It's down to individual wildlife wardens to decide what they would like to do for the wildlife in their patch. And many parishes have a team of 2 to 5 wildlife wardens working together on a range of projects. Our wardens are an amazingly diverse group with different skills and experiences, a wide age range and lots of enthusiasm. The response has been so great that we've had to release information about the scheme slowly so that we could communicate individually with all of these wonderful people. We don't know of any similar schemes, so we had to make it up as we went along. And we couldn't have got going without funding, many thanks to all of our funders, or without our super coordinator, Flavio. We provide lots of training, 25 courses to date. We provide support and resources, which you can access on our ACT Wildlife Warden site or via the new Wild About Devon website. And we've also set up an email group and a Facebook page, and they are good, Michael, where our wildlife wardens can share their ideas, their successes, and their difficulties. These things make it easier for them to discuss their projects and more recently to visit each other on site. So here are some of the different projects that our wardens have started. Sue and her helpers are turning a whole village into a nature reserve by connecting up gardens full of little habitats, including the vegetable patches. Chris's new wildflower meadow and hedge in the local cemetery is providing lots of extra species and connections. Hannah and Samantha are working with their parish councils to plant trees. Marion and Harriet ran toad rescue patrols. Vicky and Sue are maintaining bat-friendly corridors. 9 of our wildlife wardens are helping the West Country Rivers Trust by monitoring water quality in their local brooks and rivers. Ian, Lauren and Rachel are putting together a parish species list. Clive and Neil are negotiating for a new community wildlife site. Emily is recording monthly podcasts, and 15 of us are working together to become planning experts so we can monitor development and comment on our new local plan sites. Bettina, Paul, Becky and Louise are working together to manage a local Woodland Trust site. Julie and Paul are responding to local marine pressures, and several of us are helping Teignbridge District Council with its Connecting with Nature project. So, whether or not you become a wildlife warden, we really do need you to put wildlife and our planet at the heart of everything that you do. It's about the way we garden, giving nature a home, the products we use that won't cause pollution, the amount of fuel that we use to heat our houses and power our travel. If enough of us can do this, then our younger generation and following generations won't have to spend their lives witnessing the sad decline of this most beautiful planet. We simply can't do it on our own, but we can do it together. It's our gift for the future. Thank you.
Brilliant, Audrey. That was impassioned and inspirational. Thank you so much. And I am pretty sure that other parts of Devon will want to follow suit, and Teignbridge should not be alone. So, I mean, I'm sure if there are parishes out there or groups of parishes that want to get involved, then I'm sure we can guide them. Audrey, I think, can give some advice, but I'm sure Sarah will as well. So thank you so much for that. We've got a few minutes before we need to go into the next set of presentations. So I'm looking to Katie. I mean, there's been masses and masses of activity on the chat. Some of the questions have been answered as we go along. Katie, have you picked out anything that we can to our speakers?
So I think perhaps while you were last to speak, Audrey, would you mind asking a bit or answering or telling us all a bit more about how people can get involved in the Wildlife Warden scheme?
Okay,
thank you, Katie. We have actually given, as I said, moderate publicity, and we started by encouraging people just to give us their names and fill in a form with a few details of their skills. And we've then actually given them an introductory training course. So that's what we've been doing. We have also, as we've seen gaps in the coverage of our parishes, we have also got in touch with local councils to ask if they can help by finding wildlife wardens who could join our scheme. So it's a sort of, it's a very loose hybrid. I think like wildlife, which is very untidy and sticks its tentacles out, we want our scheme to be quite untidy and flexible as well. So there's all sorts of different ways people could adapt it for their own use.
Great, thanks, Audrey.
Thanks.
Katie.
Yes, so Bea asked earlier, how do we flag up to DCC potential areas that are not demarcated with posts? So perhaps, Tom, if someone thinks they have a special verge, what are the next steps that they can do?
The next step and first step should always be to contact us on nature@devon.gov.uk, and then we'll go from there, because we can either liaise with our highways the team, or we can look into it a bit more for you. But yeah, always first instance would be to email me at the nature email address that I gave earlier.
Can I add in a question to you, Tom? A lot of your emphasis there was on cutting regimes, and rightly so. One of the issues I've noticed where I live is every so often there's some clearing up of ditches and along the road sides, and that seems to invariably get dumped on the verge. And I can take you to places that were sort of Dog's Mercury and Primrose, which aren't anymore. I mean, for short stretches, but if over a period of time, that can be quite devastating. What is the policy about that? Because once you add those nutrients in, as you rightly said, you've lost your wildflowers.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So there is a DCC policy for that, and the policy is that there should be a check done by our principal contractor, which is called Skanska, prior to the deposition of any material on a road verge. So there should be a check for species wildflower stands, essentially, prior to deposition. But essentially, it is still a work in progress at the moment, because I understand it's not a perfect system at the moment, and there's still a lot more that can be done in terms of the soil deposition aspect of our work. So but we are aware of it, and highways are aware of it, and there are meetings going on. But currently, yes, the policy can be strengthened, I think, in that regard.
Yeah, good. It would be good if it could. Katie, did you pick anything else out?
Yes, so along a similar line, a question for Jess. So Ruth is asking, who chooses the wildlife sites, and how do you go about becoming Pat's County Wildlife Site?
Well, the best thing to do is to get in touch with DBRC and let us know. We have got, as well as the actual county wildlife sites, we have a lot of unconfirmed wildlife sites, and those are sites which as yet haven't been fully surveyed. So let us know if you, particularly if you're a landowner or you're near a place where you think might have special significance for biodiversity, and we can start looking at that and working out if we can go and survey it to see if it meets the criteria.
Great, thanks, Jess. Time for one more, I think. Katie,
Brilliant.
you've got one?
Yes, so perhaps maybe actually this is something worth mentioning. This is something that Alan said, but Alan's meeting with his ward councillor tomorrow to discuss green initiatives for the ward, and if each person met with their councillor too, or perhaps set up a friends of group or network for each ward with council support, engaging the local community, that tipping point could be so easily reached. So that's a really nice follow on from what Harry was saying. And then if we have time, a quick question from Sophie. Was that how will this partnership link in with the Devon Climate Emergency Interim and Final Report?
That's probably one for Sarah. I mean, we definitely are linking into that, but Sarah, do you want to answer that?
Hi, yeah, really quickly. So we're working really closely with the Devon Climate Emergency Partnership. And we're looking at the draft carbon plan at the moment and the actions that are relevant to local nature partners. And so the key one for this agenda obviously is habitat creation and woodland creation. So we will be sharing opportunities and funding, all sorts of stuff from the Woodland Trust and others through the networks for this partnership. So do sign up if you're a parish and town council to the network, and you will get our newsletter with lots of information about how you can link into the climate emergency. And do join the Facebook page as well, where we'll be putting information.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah. Right, I think we ought to move on now. So we're having some slightly longer presentations now. 10 minutes is not a lot longer than 5, is it? Double, I suppose, but only 5 minutes longer until I did O-level mathematics all those years ago. So firstly, Winkley Environmental Group, Kim.
Yes, hello. Yes, so it's lovely to be here, and with a huge audience. I'll try not to get too nervous. So I'm Kim Maluish, and I'm representing a couple of environmental groups in Winkley, actually, and I'm going to tell you our story. So unlike perhaps some of the other speakers, this is really about the nuts and bolts of doing it at grassroots level. So I'm going to tell you the story, which has been going on since about 2012, when I was involved. And I'm going to tell you the ups and the downs and what I've learned. And in summary, what I've learned is that one or two people doing something together actually can have an impact. That small. Sometimes that's a bit lonely, but you don't need big groups. We don't have a formal committee. We have a tiny budget. Another thing I've learned is that you've got to be patient. Things can take years and years. And the other thing is to be flexible, open-minded, and be willing to negotiate, as you will hear from the story that I'm going to tell you about some of the projects that I've been involved in. So first of all, I'm going to just share my first photograph, which is here, which I hope everybody can see. So in 2012, we had a social group called Green Drinks. We used to meet in the pub, and we talked about environmental things, and we talked about lots of ideas. And one idea was to develop a wildflower meadow on a patch of neglected ground, which is at the back of the sports centre at Winkley. And we had this vision of a beautiful meadow full of wildflowers. Here it is in 2012, before we started. So I need now to go to my next picture. I'm sorry, I don't seem to be able to get to my next picture.
If it helps, Kim, if you're struggling, I've got them all loaded up as well.
Oh,
if you'd like me to share my screen.
The arrow.
Go for it, Katie.
For me. Yeah.
If you could stop sharing, Kim, and I'll share mine.
Thank you. That'd be great. Thank you. Technology's beaten me, even though I practiced it lots of times. So yeah, so we have a patch of neglected ground, and the second photograph is of us at our first tree planting, which was in December 2012. As you can see, very rough ground. It was full of docks, thistles, hogweed, and stinging nettles. And we decided to put a clump of trees at the top of the mound. So we can move on to the next one. Now these trees have been donated. Most of our trees have been given by charities such as the Conservation Volunteers and the Woodland Trust, or via Southwestern Power, or from individual donations. And here is one of our first little oak trees in 2013. As you can see, the grasses are very coarse growing all around it. And we decided that we would carry on planting trees because the wildflower meadow seemed a bit ambitious. And so we decided that we would plant trees each year around the area. It's about 1/3 of an acre, the plot of land that we have. So yeah, that is the aerial view. As you can see, it's behind our sports centre. The big square is the old bowling green, and then behind that is the mound of spoil that the builders left after they built the Millennium Project Sports Centre. So the spiral that you can see there is the spiral maze. Now this is a slightly crazy but creative idea of one of the group, that we should have a sort of maze that people could walk around, and that we would fill it with native hedgerow trees and with the clump of trees on the top. A low point was reached. I said I'd talk about ups and downs. A low point was reached when, a year after we had planted our trees, the grass surrounding us was leased to a sheep farmer, and there was no fence between our trees and those sheep. So we were a bit dumbfounded and perplexed. We had to fund a fence to put around our biodiversity area to protect it. And we were also asked by a rather unhelpful committee to pay rent from then on to compensate for the fact that the sheep farmer didn't want to pay the full rent because we were occupying a corner of the field. So that was a low point in our endeavours. But if we move on to the tractor, the next one, as you can see, the grass is always a challenge. They're coarse grasses. We had a volunteer who had a tractor and could top the grass paths for us, which was good, and that didn't cost us anything. The downside of that was that, unfortunately, as the topper swings round the spiral, it clipped some of our small trees and they were destroyed, including the plastic spirals, and we had to replant some of our trees. But that was one of the downside. And then later on, we had to pay, when that volunteer could no longer do, we had to pay a contractor. So we have to pay £30 an hour to a contractor to bring a tractor and to top the grass for us. So that was a cost that we had to find funds to meet. So can we move on? Thank you. But as we've already mentioned, the recognition that there's a climate emergency, both sort of in the public arena and in the political arena, I think brought tree planting a lot to people's attention. And so although sometimes before we were perhaps 2 or 3 people putting in a bunch of trees, from 2019 to early 2020, we had several groups of very willing volunteers coming along and planting more trees around the spiral. As you can see, the grasses are still very coarse. That's always going to be a challenge. The next one, please. And here we were delighted that we had young people for the first time. Most of the volunteers have been retired people and older people, and so it was great to have young families getting involved, and so that was a change for us. But that was January 2020, and lockdown came. We still had another 100 trees to plant, and again we were back to 1s and 2s, just going up and planting a few in an afternoon. So that was the change that has come for the last couple of years now. So yeah, so could we move to the next one? Thank you. And here we have Maggie with her new mowing machine. So instead of a tractor, the push along mower, much better for going around the spiral maze. And Maggie is giving her labour for free as well. So that was really helpful to us, and that's helped to keep the paths open so that people can walk around and enjoy the trees that are gradually growing up. So the next one, this was taken just last week, And the good news is that the sheep farmer no longer has a contract with the grass surrounding the biodiversity area. It's going to be cut only for hay in future, or possibly for silage, but this is a hay crop that's just being taken. So we do have the fence to protect us, but fortunately we don't have the sheep. We were very worried that they might get in. So that's in June 2021. Right at the back of the original trees, they've obviously been there since the 1970s. But you can see that some of the silver birches and some of the cherries are really taking on height. And yeah, thank you. And this is why we were doing it. And we've done both bumblebee surveys, butterfly surveys, bat surveys, and so on up there to see what's going on. And gradually over the years, we have the nature has moved in, basically. Nature has moved in. We've seen lizards and butterflies, and we have a good crop of wildflowers as well. So we just move through the next couple. They're just butterflies and bees. Yes, as you can see, you have a lot of knapweed there. So in 2019, Winkley Parish Council declared a climate emergency, and a group was set up called Winkley Environment Group. And one of the projects that was already ongoing, because the Tarka Country Trust was running the Life of the Verge project before Devon County Council took it over, and we'd been on some plant ID training already and done some surveys. But in April this year, I went on a survey round the village of the parish verges, the verges that Winkley Parish Council are responsible for cutting. And we sorted out those that we would leave to grow this season and then cut at the end of the season, those that needed to be mown 4 times a year and the grass taken back off to reduce the fertility. And then the other, a few of them were managed individually by villagers who have scarified the verge with a scarifier, which was purchased by Winkley Society and a donor as well. So we have a scarifier, and native wildflower seeds were sown on some of those verges. So this is a partnership between Winkley Parish Council, Winkley Environment Group, Winkley Biodiversity Group, and Winkley Society. And so I'll just let you see the next 2 slides, which are of the wildflowers. Some of those are existing already in the verge, and some of them are from wildflower seed that has come up, the annuals that you can see there. There's both that one and this one, which is quite a stunning photo, thanks to one of our parish councillors, Stone, who took that picture. So what next for Winkley? Well, we're hoping to have a Winkley Nature Recovery Plan, and to involve all sectors and aspects of our parish of Winkley and Holcombe. And already we've got Winkley Sports Centre, Winkley Parish Church and their churchyard, and the allotments group expressing an interest in putting more plans in place to increase the biodiversity in future. So that's what we're planning to do, and that's what we have achieved so far. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Kim. I mean, I think that's a sort of classic story, really, of sort of, ups and downs and misadventures and changes of plan. And then, I was thinking at one point, I think, oh crumbs, where are we going with this, Kim? And then you come up at the end with these wonderful pictures, photographs, not only of the verges, but the site itself beginning to take shape. It does take a long time, and it's a learning process. So thank you very much for that. Right, we're going to go to Dittersham now. Councillor Sunny Nightingale, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Let's see if I can do this screen sharing gizmo. Here we go. Great. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so in Diddersham Parish Council, we also declared a climate and environmental emergency. Often people forget the environmental bit at the end. That should make it uncontroversial for any town or parish council to follow suit. But perhaps that's not quite yet the case, although there's such a groundswell of opinion and support building, I think, that it's increasingly less so. We also voted to consider the climate and the environment in all our decisions and activities. So, and that's perhaps a less controversial thing to vote on. At the same time, a sustainability group was set up called Sustainable Diddersham, or SUSDIT, and like Winkley, some of our projects are sort of partnership projects where the unstructured nature of the sustainability group works very well with the more structured nature of the parish council. Like Kim, I'd also say that sometimes, or certainly I had to be a bit patient as well. We're always keen to push stuff ahead really fast, or I am, but if you push too fast, you don't take everyone with you, and it's vital to take as many people with you as possible. So one of the projects that we decided to do was a habitat review. And so we made some proposals, with the sustainability group made some proposals to the parish council, and we voted to go ahead and do that. One of the first things was to map out the habitats of what we had. So we made a Google map, and we marked the bits of the parish that the parish council own and coloured them in. Nice and simple, and it's free. And then we did a walk around with councillors and with members of the sustainability group, and we're lucky enough to have someone called Stevie Rogers locally, who is a bit of an expert in this field. That then led to some proposals, and we made this earlier picture, which had a very simple map of the main. This is just the main recreation area, which is a bit of green grass. And in the main, we identified areas for improvement, where we could plant trees, for instance, areas we just leave as is, and areas where we might change the maintenance regime. So yeah, this is from the tree planting that happened earlier this year. There's Ros, one of our councillors, looking happy but very wet. And we have Mike there standing under a nice mature tree with a view down to the river. So people enjoy using this grassy area. So one of the things we had to do was make sure we retain that grassy area and the view to the river, so as not to impede on that, because there's multiple people wanting to use this area in multiple ways. There's Bindi the dog next to one of the trees that we were planting, and there's our son Zav digging a hole. My son and daughter and father are all involved. So it's about bringing in as many other people and many other groups, just like Winkley, that can work together. Here's another councillor, Graham, standing in front of one of the trees a few days ago, which is doing rather well. We planted 50 trees in all, and they were paid for half by the parish council and half by the local charity, which is the Parish of Diddersham charity. It's not a lot of money we spent. It's going to add up to 500 quid in total. It's done in phases. This is the first phase with some tree planting and some changes to the maintenance regime. And the next phase will be leaving a 2-metre strip, sort of where Graham is, and planting some wildflowers inside it and some shrubs, and just generally leaving it for much longer. I'll whiz through. There's the entrance to the ham. You can see the start I've been calling mullet maintenance, which is you make it tidy at the front and wild at the back. And then that line looks nice and deliberate. And that keeps everyone kind of happy, because you've got a nice neatness and wildness combined. Here's some crocuses that the Rotary Club donated at the same time in the neat bit, which again, it's enhanced the area as well. And there's another picture of the sculpture. A bit here, which is quite cleared beforehand, but now is wilder. We're going to add a bit more structure to that with a couple of trees planted into it. Our next plan really is to take the Devon carbon plan and South Hams action plan, and pull out the bits that are relevant to us and make our own plan from that. But a simple one, simple and doable, is how we've kept it, and then it actually gets done. And I think I've spoken enough.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much indeed, Sonny. And I really like the way you you were sort of conscious of other people's views on some of this. I mean, these can be sensitive issues, and keeping the view to the river and having that line so that people couldn't sort of feel as though it was just neglect. I think this is often very much the case in churchyards, where it can be quite sensitive, the rewilding of churchyards, and having a space which is clearly wild, but a space that isn't, and information as well. Mm-hmm. I know in the local churchyard where I live, there's a sort of information board saying why they're doing what they're doing. And so I think that's really, really important. We need to take people with us on this journey, don't we?
For sure.
So, okay, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we're moving now to a launch of Wild About Devon Community Awards. So exciting. Prizes. Well, I don't know. Well, I suppose an award implies to me a prize. We should find out anyway. So John Green, Life on the Yealm, over to you to take us through this, please.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So today we're launching Devon's Wildlife Community of the Year Award. So it's celebrating what people are doing across Devon. And there's going to be 2 awards. One is for communities, which can be anything from a group of friends to a school club, a community group, anybody that really gets together and brings other people in their community to take action for wildlife. And then there'll be a special prize for a parish and town council that's part of the Wild About Devon network. And if they develop or support wildlife in their community, they could be up for the award. How to get involved, I can hear you say. So just contact people who are in your community, who you might think might want to take action to help wildlife, organise an event or an action, and then just tell us about it. And we'll put that information on our website to inspire others. Entries can be made between, well, really now and the 17th of July, 2022. So you've got a whole year. And then there'll be a panel of judges from the Local Nature Partnership Board who will assess the entries. And from that, we will shortlist potential winners in August 2022. There'll be site visits to those shortlisted entries in probably August or September 22. And then in the autumn, there'll be an award ceremony. And so we're very much looking forward to telling you more about that. And that will be crowning the winners. So the community, which is judged to implement the most effective actions to support wildlife between the 1st of July, a few days time, and the 30th of June next year. So a whole year, they'll be crowned as Devon's Wildlife Community of the Year. And the same for the Parish and Town Council, which is judged to have supported wildlife the most effectively over that year period, will be awarded the Parish and Town Council Wildlife Award. So that's a very quick run through. There'll be entries, an entry form on the Devon LNP website at this link, and there's information on there now, and the form is being prepared so that you'll be able to make entries from later this year.
Brilliant, thanks, John. And I think the message there as well is to encourage communities and councils to get involved. We're not necessarily looking here for the most cracking wildlife outcome, and you know it's the effort and it's the initiative and it's the vision that's as important as actual outcomes. And indeed, many of the initiatives that are starting now and have started in the last few years, it'll be a while before you can actually say, hey, that's a real thriving nature site. But it takes time, it takes management, it takes commitment. So I think that's really what we're looking for, isn't it, John? The kind of people have put energy and drive into it. So do consider entering that during the coming 12 months. It's not much of a competition. You don't have many entries. So we want to have a choice here. We want to have an excuse, don't we, Sarah? We want to have an excuse to go around Devon and see some nice places as well. So do go for that. Right. Okay. I think we've come to a spot now where we can look at some questions again, Katie. If you've been following those, which I don't know how you multitask. So you're sort of on top of all the technology and on top of what's going on in the chat, but we're dependent on you.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Yeah, it's been really lovely to see everyone asking questions and also other people answering them and having your own conversations. And hopefully, once we've set up some community networking forums and also the parish and town council forums, these conversations can continue. But one of the recurring questions, which I think Ian has spotted, is around recording wildlife. So on our website, we've got some information on how you can initially look at the wildlife in your area and record it. And we have some information about how you can share this. And also, as part of the Wild About Devon initiative, we'll be running a series of wildlife webinars, one of the first of which will be run by Devon Biodiversity Record Centre, and they'll be explaining more about how you can record wildlife. But I think Jess or Ian, would you like to add anything as to how people can send their records to you, or how they can record things in the first place, or any advice on forms and things like that?
Okay, thanks, Katie. Jess, this is probably one for you.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of ways that you can record wildlife. You can record through our website, dbrc.org.uk, or through apps such as iRecord. But we would make sure that whatever app that you're using, if you choose to use one, that it does have a way that the local record centres can get that data too. But you can also email us as well. All the information's on our website, and we'll give you more information in the webinar in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so to find out the details of the webinar, go to the LMP website, and that will give a lot more. Thanks for that. I just see there's a question from Nora. Will the competition have an award or commendation? John, I don't know what's in mind in terms of the actual award. Is it 10 free trees, or what are we talking about?
No, we're actually planning to provide a moth trap to the winning community.
Oh, brilliant.
And in terms of the parish council or town council, they might just get an award. And the question is really about whether there'll be an award specific for youth or schools. And I think at the moment we're planning that they could enter a youth group or a school group for the main award. It might be at a later date that we think, yes, we want to promote a specific award for either youth groups or schools, but we've not come to that point yet.
Okay, that's good. Thanks for that. Katie, anything else?
Yes, so there's been quite a lot of discussion in the chat about getting people on your side. So some people have had complaints from churches or parish councils who perhaps want a very neat churchyard. And I just wanted, maybe perhaps everyone on the panel, would you be willing to share some of your tips about how you've managed to handle conflict of interest in creating these wildlife areas? Any top tips?
Any top tips? I don't think there's an easy answer to this, to be honest. I think it's, if I go first, I mean, I think it is largely about trying to take people with you, and being a bit patient. I think, you know, if there are one or two people who are deeply upset by the notion of a churchyard being rewilded, well, yeah, wait a little bit, just take it slowly, maybe do one area first and explain that. You know, I think we do have to take people with us and recognize some of the sensitivities. So I think there are also, personally, I'd say there are degrees of doing this. You know, I think you know, I don't think many people would want to see a churchyard completely treed over, for example. So it's got to be about grassland, doesn't it, there, and wildflowers. Anyway, I'm speaking, and I'm only one person. Anybody else got any views on this? Yeah, Audrey.
Right. In our local Trustham churchyard, we have a really brilliant range of flowers, and to help people to appreciate just how good it is, I think that lockdown was the first really big thing when it wasn't mowed for several months, and so the whole thing was in bloom. And we've got a village email, which could be a Facebook page or various other things, but I went and made a list of the flowers there. I put on the village email just how many there were. There were 99.
in God's Acre, which is pretty brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I went and put some little labels out so that even during lockdown, people could go and see some of the flowers with a label beside them. And people have got quite keen and quite interested. And I think we have got to win people over, but we need to do it quite actively by making it interesting for them.
Yeah. I mean, another tip I would give is if you've got a school, get the school involved. People tend to be kinder to children than they are to their own peers, I find, and can be a little bit more indulgent about children doing stuff. So that's another tip I would offer. Any thoughts from other members of the panel on this one? I see we've got some comments about active listening skills. Yeah, well, we had those things coming up on the comments about it can be difficult in certain contexts. Of course it can. Any other comments, Katie, that you've picked up?
Yes. So this is quite an early question that came up, and this might be one for Sarah. But when will the Devon Nature Recovery Plan be available?
Yeah, well, it's all happening, but I'm not sure of a precise timetable, Sarah.
No, so this is the local nature recovery strategy, Katie.
Yeah.
So no, so we're waiting. So Cornwall were a pilot, and they finished that at the end of May, I think, wasn't it, Michael, and fed back to DEFRA. So we're waiting for DEFRA to look at the pilots, for the Environment Bill to happen, for DEFRA hopefully to give us lots of money and some guidance so that we can then develop the Devon Local Nature Recovery Strategy.
Yeah,
I've started doing some mapping though already with LNP partners, and we'll have that on the website soon.
I mean, it'll be an interesting question if it's delayed. I mean, we have, as Sarah said, we've done the mapping, so we've got an awful lot of information there that could be made available soon. The actual the strategy is a statutory thing, and the Environment Bill's got to finish its passage through Parliament, and then there will be probably quite a while before these things start taking shape. I'm reckoning it's going to be 2 or 3 years before we begin to see them adopted by local councils, because they will have to be owned by a council. So I think it, but I don't think we should be hanging around waiting for a statutory plan. We should be getting the information available, doing what we can do at a local level, so the plan has got a basis. So, we don't want, there's stuff already there.
Exactly.
That I think is going to be really important.
Yeah, we already have. I mean, we had the biodiversity action plan that was done quite a while ago now, but we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And Wild About Devon really is a critical bit of implementation of the local nature recovery strategy. Everything that everybody can do across the county is really important. So, and it makes a big difference. So it's not just about what the RSPB, the Wildlife Trust, and the local authorities are doing. It's what everybody can do.
Yeah.
Hence today.
I see lots of chat. We won't go back to it, but lots of chat about how to deal with the church situation, churchyards, and some constructive ideas. We
will actually on that one. Sorry, Michael. We will. I mean, I know it's a huge issue and can cause lots of conflict in communities. So we will be having a series of webinars, and we'll do one of those on churches. But also if people have got anything they want to share for the webinars, particularly this agenda, because it is so important, then do let us know.
Okay, Katie, anything else coming up from your analysis?
So this was a really exciting comment from Julian, who has a 4-acre field that is letting go wild, and that he kind of wants to know, how do we link up like-minded individuals to allow a common goal of rewilding and tree planting? And there's a lot of complexity with different organisations and grants, and we need one organisation to link them up, set priorities and direct resources. So this is kind of what the Wild About Devon initiative is all about, is trying to put all this information in one place to help you, and it will then direct you to all the different organisations where you can get grants and advice. And then he then goes on to say, because there are so many possible sources of information, websites and resources available, can we have a guide to these? So hopefully if you all have a look on the Wild About Devon website, there'll be lots of information on there that will get you started on this. And then Hilary has asked, or would like to know a bit more about hedges. So kind of what's the protection already around hedges, and can they be more protected?
That's, have we got a hedge expert here? There's not an awful lot of, I mean, there is some protection in place around removing them, but management is the key issue here, and for many years, you know, the advice has been, you know, to trim less often than once a year, and ideally to have a sort of rotational management system. A lot of farmers are just not very keen on that for all sorts of reasons. I think it's an educational thing as much as anything, and encouragement. It'll be interesting to see whether the new environment land management schemes, when they come forward, have specific clauses around hedges and opportunities around hedges. I think the problem for your average farmer and landowner is that, you know, once they get to a certain height, they become a major issue in terms of labour to get to sort out again. So it's very simple to just take the bar to them once a year and bash them down. Whereas if you're going on a rotational system, you know, it's more labour intensive when the time comes. But I mean, it's infinitely better for wildlife. I mean, the ideal, of course, is if they're properly steeped in the old Devon style every 10 or 15 years and then let grow up again. But that's, yeah, someone's just mentioned the Devon Hedge Group. We also have Rob Walton on the call. I don't suppose he is on the call, is he? Rob's the great Devon hedge expert.
I don't think so, but I've lined Rob up to do a hedge webinar one evening.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, wait for that.
Good. Yeah.
Okay. Could I, Michael, I'm aware we're out of time. Could I just, one thing really quickly, somebody said something about social media. Not everybody likes social media. We are trying to set up a discussion forum that isn't Facebook, because I'm aware I don't like Facebook, lots of other people don't. We've trying to use Audrey's group IO system, which is brilliant, but we hit Devon County Council data protection issues. So we are aware of that, and we are trying to set something up, and we will let everybody know. So
yeah, good. I don't do Facebook either, so no intention of starting at this time of life.
Can I also one small thing, Michael, is just I'd like to take this public opportunity to say thank you to Katie, because she's been with us for a year in lockdown, helping to run the LMP, and as everybody can see tonight, she's brilliant. She should probably go and work on Spring Watch. But she's off to do a PhD on peat restoration in Auckland Islands. So I just want to say a public thank you to Katie, and thank you for tonight, because you're fab.
Here. All of us endorse that. And when are you off then, Katie?
Oh, I finish here in 2 weeks. But it might be another year before the Falklands.
Yeah. You've got. Where are you doing your PhD?
In Bangor.
Oh, in Bangor. Okay. Oh, that's nice. I know some of the Bangor people anyway. That's not for now. Well, enjoy and good luck. We'll see you in 3 or 4 years' time as Dr. Ross, I'm sure. So, okay. Well, I think time has come. I'm sure people have got suppers to eat and hens to shut up and all these things that we do at this time of day. So I just want to thank all the speakers this evening. I won't go through all the names again, but you've all been wonderful at keeping to time, wonderful with your different stories and different experiences, and I think it's been very encouraging. I hope everyone is as encouraged as I am. I did actually mention earlier in the day to Tony Juniper, the chair of Natural England, who many of you all know. I said this is what I'm doing this evening, and he said it's a great Wild About Devon. He said it's a great title, so it's got the thumbs up from Tony, which is good. So let's hope that this goes from strength to strength, and I should express my thanks very much to Sarah, as well as to Katie and others who've set this up and whose vision this has been. I think we're well blessed in Devon with some really great support from DCC for these kind of initiatives, and long may it last through these straitened times for local government finance. We're very blessed to have some good people at County Hall working on these kind of issues, as well as being very blessed with some tremendous NGOs. We've heard from the Wild Trust, Devon Wildlife Trust tonight. We've got others as well, like the Woodland Trust, and which of course started in Devon all those many years ago, back in the 80s. So on that note of positivism, I hope I'll bid you good night, and hopefully we will have similar events in future. Thanks for all the comments that are still coming in as I speak. And we're going to obviously collect all those. And if you feel your question's not been adequately answered, just ping an email, and we'll try and get back to you on that as well. So thanks everybody, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thanks, Cindy.
Bye.
Cheers.
We just hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Just saving the chat.
Is that it? Is everyone gone? Oh, it's weird. This isn't. Oh,
There was somebody
John.
coming in just then. I don't know what that was about.
Hello, John. It's running away now.
Hi.
Audrey's John.
I think Harry's gone already, hasn't he?
Harry had to leave early.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. It works. Hooray!
Yeah. All the technology worked.
We didn't lose everybody, and the animations and everything worked. Phew.